Welcome to the StoryADay podcast. This is Julie Duffy from StoryADay.org, encouraging you to be a writer every day, not someday.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Julie from StoryADay here. I wanted to talk about something today that came up from something Roxane Gay wrote in a newsletter recently. She was talking about, 2021 was a hard year. I think it was a lot harder than a lot of us expected it to be. Our expectations were frustrated. And it's something that comes up regardless of external circumstances for writers a lot. Because we have expectations about what being a writer should look like. And Roxane Gay wrote in the newsletter, documented some of the things she had done in the past year, and then commented on the fact yet she still finds herself wandering around the house, not actually writing much, not writing the things she wants to be writing, running late on deadlines, things like that, and then just not writing when she doesn't have to. And the implication was, and then she said she finds herself wandering around the house saying things like, I guess I'm not a writer after all, or I guess I'm not a writer anymore. And on a human level, I just want to run over there and give her a big hug and say, I'm so sorry you feel that way. And B, I wanted to talk about it because in 13 rounds of StoryADay May and running this thing for 12 years, I have met relatively few people who have been able to give up writing. And usually the exceptions are people who were dabbling with writing while avoiding their true creative passion. They were procrastinating by coming and doing my challenge because they were scared to make art. They were scared to throw pots. They were scared to pick up the guitar again. One of the few people I can think of who hasn't gone away and come back to StoryADay is Amanda Makepeace. In following Amanda on Twitter, I see this amazing art, beautiful drawing popping up all the time. And then I was delighted to open up one of the writing publications that I subscribed to a while ago. And there it was, cover art by Amanda Makepeace. And I was like, well, great, She played in our creative pool for a little while and stayed connected to the writing world. But the true passion was the art, and my goodness, does it show. Most people question whether they're a writer, question whether they have a right to call themselves a writer. They make an effort for a few months or a couple of years, and then the world kind of lets them down. They don't get what they think the rewards for writing should be. Now, this is not applying to Roxane Gay because she's got a bunch of the rewards for writing. She makes her living in the literary world. She's been published. She writes columns. She's got books. So that's not what I'm saying. But for most of us, that is harder to get to. And it's not, as I'm always banging on about here, it's not the only definition of success. It's not even the most meaningful definition of success, because it's like the moment. It's like the wedding day. The wedding day is not the marriage. If you're only happy when you're getting published and interviewed and doing a book tour, then that's a kind of a skewed version of what it means to be a writer. And what we do here at StoryADay is, the rest of the year is work on that part. Work on what is it that I want to get out of writing? How can I keep writing when I'm not seeing the kinds of results that the outside world thinks come from being a successful writer? How can I pull time away from my children to go and write if I'm not earning money from it? I've given lots of sermons on this topic. Plenty of people take time away from their families to do all kinds of things they don't get paid for. They run, they play golf, they go to book clubs, they travel. But for some reason, we seem to think that the arts should pay. And you're not allowed to practice unless you're on a professional path. And that's nonsense. Nonsense, pure and simple. Most of what we do as writers doesn't get seen. And most of the result of what we do, we'll never see. We don't ever get to see, really, how people react to our writing. You might get to see how people react to parts of it at a public reading. You might get comments from a few readers telling you how your writing has affected them. But these are the exception. These are the little moments that might gee us up and keep us going on a bad day. But we have to be able to find ways to keep ourselves going regardless. And the reality is, over these 12 years that I've been running this, I see people coming back over and over again. And the only thing that happens when they stop practicing their writing is that they regret it. Now, when I say stop practicing their writing, I really mean stop practicing being a writer. When you're being a writer, you're not constantly scribbling in notebooks. You're scribbling in notebooks some of the time, but you are observing the world. You are maybe getting that notebook out to write down 14 colours that you see in a sunset and the things that you could compare them to. You might be pulling it out to catch a fragment of conversation, a turn of phrase, a line from a book, an idea that pops into your head while you're reading a really good essay. Being a writer also means creating space for those ideas to gel and those ideas to percolate. It means putting time on your calendar to intentionally step away from the noise and the bustle of everyday life and sink into a state where you can be creative. It's not about word count. It's not about stories finished. It's not about publications. It's not about good critiques. It's not about revision. It's not about craft. The first step to being a writer is living. I don't think that anyone who has the impulse to write can get rid of it. You can run from it. You can try other stuff. But Roxane Gay saying, "I guess I'm not a writer anymore," is just her darkest doubts surfacing. Really? I hope that she knows there's no way she's not a writer. And I hope you know that if you're listening to me blather on week after week, there's no way that you're not a writer. You're a writer. And you have to get, your job, I think, is to get comfortable with that and figure out how you can do more of the things that make you happier in the process of being a writer. And sometimes you have to do things that you don't enjoy, but learning those skills can actually make you happier because we tend to be, as writers, curious. We tend to be lifelong learners. And if you aren't comfortable with writing titles for short stories or revising short stories, there's a million ways out there for you to learn how to get better at that skill. And that in itself will be fun because we like learning, because we're nerds. But the question of whether you are a writer or not is just not one that I think you should even spend any time worrying about. What you have to do, and I say have to, I hate to be prescriptive, what I encourage you to do is think about how you can define success as a writer so that you, when that voice comes up that says, "I guess I'm not a writer anymore," you can say, no, that's not right, because writers do these things. Writers observe, writers live, writers wait, writers think, writers go for walks, writers raise their families, writers do grocery shopping. None of these things mean that you're not a writer. Writers also don't finish stuff, right? Real writers, angst about whether what they've written is any good. Real writers get hurt by criticism. Real writers allow that criticism to let them second guess their own writing. Real writers are just humans who write. So you can say to your subconscious, no, I am a real writer. And then turn your focus back to doing the things that prove it. grab a writing prompt from StoryADay.org. There's tons of them there, 12 years worth, and write a story. Download the short story formula, framework, whatever I'm calling it, and drag that out. If you've already downloaded it, find it on your hard drive, short story framework, and just fill it in. You don't even have to write the story. That alone will get your brain turning. And if you're further along in the process and there's something in the craft that you're struggling with, if you're working on novels and the story structure is defeating you, or if you're trying to figure out how to have a character arc work out without being too obvious, there are, there's resources you can use. There are people you can talk to. There's community you can get into and ask those specific questions. That is part of being a writer. So I hope that someone is saying these things to Roxane Gay. It's probably herself. She's not a stupid woman. But you don't have to be stupid to have these voices in your head. This is normal. You have to be human to have these voices in your head. I can think of that one person in all the years I've run StoryADay who didn't write again. And I don't even know that she didn't write again. I just know that for her, the overwhelming passion was another art. There are other people who come in and then they have young families and then their overwhelming obsession becomes raising that family, which is a noble thing. And they tend to come back to their writing later and they tend to worry about the time they've lost. And yet they've lived all those years and none of that is wasted. So I hope that you will write yourself a note and stick it somewhere you can see it that just says, I'm a writer. And let's just put that question behind you. If you feel an urge to write and you ever act on it, you're a writer. And the things that you're doing that feel like not writing are things a writer does. And then I encourage you to find a way to do more of the things that make you happy as a writer. And that's probably writing. And it probably means you need some deadlines, and it probably means that you need some community, and you can find those things at StoryADay, or you can find them somewhere else. And if you need to know how, drop me a line and I will introduce you to a bunch of resources that we have here and maybe some other resources that might be a better fit for you. You're a writer, I'm a writer, let's go forth and be writers.
Thanks for listening. Why not come over to the blog at storyaday.org and check out this week's writing prompts and articles. And in the meantime, have a great creative week and of course, keep writing.